The UKIP, UK Independence Party, holds its press conference with its new leader, Richard Braine, later today. Mr. Braine saw off challenges to win the leadership from Gerard Batten, who stood down. And Mr. Braine joins me now. What will you be saying at your press conference later today? Good morning to you.
Thanks a lot. Good morning. Thanks for having me on, Nick. What will I be saying? Well, you'll have to wait and see. But obviously, I'm going to talk about my plans for the leadership. I'm going to talk about the future of UKIP and why UKIP is still important, still has a lot of good work to do.
Those words don't seem to go together at the moment, the future of UKIP. What on earth can you possibly say?
Well, I think UKIP has a great future. I mean, people forget that UKIP bumbled along on a very small vote for a long time before producing this extraordinary revolution that has taken, has really occupied everybody for the last 3 years at least. And so we still have lots of ideas and things to push for. And often it doesn't take long for people to respond. If you get your policy right, people start voting for you. We saw that from about the period of, let's say, 2010 to 2014.
Why didn't you share one idea now?
Sorry, say again, please.
Why don't you share one of those ideas now?
Well, I mean, look, we have a manifesto that's available on UKIP's website, ukip.org, and people should read it. It's a great manifesto. It's been evolving over many years, and we talk about a lot of things that people are uncomfortable talking about. So, one of the things, for instance, that we're very strong on is immigration, because overcrowding in London and in the rest of the country is a major problem, and people are struggling to have access to healthcare, schools, housing, jobs, and there is wage compression as a result. So we've got great policies to solve a lot of those problems, and I think if people saw those policies, they would respond well.
Is this the manifesto that was in place at the recent Brecon by-election when you were beaten by the monster raving loony party?
Well, we've always done badly in Brecon, apart from in 2015. It's obviously been one of our weakest constituencies.
The loony party, Mr. Braine, it doesn't get any lower, does it?
Well, I don't think that's right. If you go back and look at the early years of UKIP, we've frequently beaten by them, I think, as I understand it. But, parties, the popularity of parties comes and goes. We're not a major party like Tories or Labour with their, frankly, terrible track record. We're in a party that brings interesting and new ideas, revolutionary ideas in the case of the Brexit revolution. And we really pushed that and made that happen. So it shows that a small party like us can make things happen in this country, and we can have a real influence and really change politics. So,
and one of the things that it seems that you might want to, I'm trying to clarify this, is that you want to stop the Quran being handed out. Is that correct?
Well, that's actually something of a misstatement by the press about what I actually said. What I actually said is this: that we've got laws against incitement to violence. And there are several verses in the Quran that do incite people to commit violence against the unbeliever. And the problem is that we see it actually happening. So, if you look at Manchester Arena, if you look at Lee Rigby or London Bridge, Westminster Bridge, Assad Sham, what's been going on in Australia recently, in the 55 countries last year that suffered actual Islamic attacks. If you look at those...
No, Mr. Braine, we'll do it my way. Are you trying to stop the Quran being handed out? That's what I'm trying to get at, though.
Well, what I question is the issue of the law and whether it's... I mean, I'm not talking about changing the law necessarily, but I do ask that we have laws against incitement, and arguably that would include handing people documents that say, you should go and do this if it's a violent act against an innocent person. And so that's why I think that we need to look very carefully into that question. Obviously, this is a controversial issue, I understand that, but it is a fact that people hand out books in Leicester Square that tell people to go and kill their neighbours.
Right. So would you also seek to stop the building of new mosques?
We haven't got a policy to stop the building of new mosques in our manifesto, but we do want to look at foreign funding, because it does seem that some of the mosques where, the real extremist preaching occurs are funded from abroad. And we know that, Wahhabist and Salafi, some of the worst examples of it, have been secretly filmed, as you know, if you've watched it, and that is being preached. So we do see extremism, pro-violent extremism preached in this country, in mosques. And again, we need to look very, very carefully at whether it's right to allow this to happen when, on the face of it, that's already illegal.
Is Tommy Robinson involved in UKIP currently?
No.
Would you seek to have him involved in UKIP?
No.
Right, because your predecessor, and it is difficult keeping up with the number of the people who lead UKIP, there's so many of you, but your predecessor seemed to have a a position where he wanted to welcome Tommy Robinson on board?
Well, to be honest, he, as far as I'm concerned, I speak to him obviously and see him, and he seems to be less obsessed by Tommy Robinson than the press. So I mean, you've just brought him up. It's normally the press that brings him up in any interviews that I do, and most UKIP people I think find that other people bring that subject up a lot. They use it as some kind of stick to beat us with. The reality is that last summer in 2018, Robinson was wrongly imprisoned, and we know that because they actually released him because he was wrongly imprisoned. Now he's in prison at the moment, I know, but I think look, this is not a big issue. We've got rules, unlike the Tories and Labour Party. We've got rules to stop people from extreme organisations coming into the party, so he can't even join UKIP.
What is your view of Mr. Robinson?
I think he's done an extraordinarily courageous thing to bring attention to a vast number of crimes occurring in this country, where the police were told apparently to look the wrong way, look the other way, while these crimes went ahead. And I think he's done a good thing to bring that to people's attention.
So you condone breaking the law?
Well, in bringing attention to these rape gangs that were allowed to just carry on regardless, he wasn't breaking the law. When he went on Newsnight in 2011 to talk about this, long before the J report, he wasn't breaking the law.
Subsequently, by filming people when he was ordered not to, he broke the law. You support that, do you?
No, I didn't say that.
No, but you supported what he's doing. So you don't support when he breaks the law?
No, of course not.
Right, okay. Just to clarify, one other aspect is you seem to have trouble with the name of the London mayor.
Well, that's a story I made a spelling mistake, and that's been turned into a great big, story. I mean, I don't think it's not really, is it? Because you. I'm sure your listeners have got better things to listen to than discussion of spelling mistakes.
Well, I'll be the judge of that. The London mayor is, of course, Sadiq Khan, but you appear to call him on Twitter Siddiq Khan after one of the London bombers, after one of the bombers responsible, of course, for the London terror attack. And you say, apologies, I often confuse him with the leader of the 7/7 bombers. Well, I was talking about the spelling, obviously, because Sadiq Khan and Sadiq Khan are quite easily confused. You're the leader of a political party, and you can't tell the difference between an elected mayor and a terrorist. I was actually referring to the spelling. If you look at the context of that tweet, it's actually referring to the spelling. So, I mean, that's why I think we're wasting the time of your listeners talking about a spelling error. I'll be the judge of that, Mr. Braine. I'll judge that, thank you. How often do you confuse? I think your listeners should judge. Well, they probably are. Don't worry, I'm prepared to run the risk. How often do you confuse the two? Well, I don't know. The point is that if you spell... These are your words. Well, the point is that when you write the word Sadiq and Sadiq, which are phonetically more or less identical... So that's my final question. How often do you confuse? Because you're seeking to lead a political party in this country, and you, quote, often confuse the elected mayor of London with a terrorist. And I'm asking how often you make this mistake. Well, for the third time, I'm going to say to you, it's a spelling confusion, and I think it's a waste of time to go on about this. Can't we talk about more interesting things? No, I'm fascinated by how you get that wrong. Well, Sadiq and Sadiq are easy to confuse. But you get it wrong oftentimes. Well, I mean, it's not uncommon when you have two spellings of a name to have to think up which, before you write it, you have to think, hang on, which way is it spelled this time? So this is never intentional. Sorry, say again? This is never intentional. What, a spelling mistake? Yeah, you never do it deliberately. Not really, no. I do my best to spell. Are you really grilling me on my spelling? I mean, it's an extraordinary interview. No, I'm just interested. Can't we do better? I'm doing it as you're doing it deliberately. You're deliberately trying to link an elected official of London with a terrorist, whether you do it deliberately to cause mischief. Well, that's your view, but I honestly think we've got more important things to talk about in this country. We've got a lot of issues to deal with politically in this country, and this is a waste of time. No, I'm asking you, Mr. Braine, do you do it deliberately? Sorry, do I do what deliberately? Misspell words in general? No. No. As you say, you often confuse him, Mayor Khan, with the leader of the 7/7 bombers. So you do it deliberately.
But as you know, that was in the context of having simply spelt Sadiq the wrong way. And of course, there's several ways of spelling Sadiq. And every time you write the name Sadiq, you have to try to remember which spelling it is. And there are many other names like that where you have to remember multiple different spellings, and sometimes it's tricky.
Why would anybody vote UKIP when they could vote Brexit?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, UKIP is a party that has members who actually vote, who can choose their leader, and who choose the chairman, the branch chairman, and so forth. And UKIP's got a published manifesto. We've been working so hard for Brexit for 27 years, and we really brought about this fantastic political revolution that's happening in this country.
Why would you not vote Brexit? Why wouldn't listeners who are Brexit minded, and the Brexit Party, I think even you would have to agree, has a fair amount of wind in its sails? Why wouldn't they now vote the Brexit Party rather than UKIP?
Well, as I just explained, we have a proper manifesto, but there are lots of other reasons. I mean, the Brexit Party is quite possibly going to be swallowed up by the Tory Party. It seems like it's almost a Tory life raft. And after Brexit is delivered, if it is on October the 31st, then I have to question what the purpose of the Brexit Party will be after that. So it's sort of a one issue, fly by night, a sort of firework of a party, and that's great. And if Brexit's delivered, that's great. But UKIP will continue fighting for British independence. And after Brexit, we're going to have to keep fighting, because I could be quite sure that Sir Nick Clegg and Gideon Osborne and all of the Remainiacs will continue to campaign to take us back into this disastrous totalitarian Soviet-style empire. So we're going to have to keep fighting for it for years, I'm sure of it.
Richard Braine is the newly elected leader of UKIP. You hold your first press conference later today. Thank you for appearing here on LBC.
Thanks a lot, Nick.
46.
Thank you so much for your time today, Richard.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.